things, a lot of it does come in from Canada.
It does.
And so we'll end up putting very severe tariffs on that if we have to, because that's the way you want to bolster here. And we can do it here. We can all do that here. But I would say what you do, you put very severe tariffs on from coming into other countries. You'll be making your own fertilizer.
Our goal for Canada is to double our non-US exports over the course of the next decade, generating more than $300 billion more in trade. And that's new orders for Canadian resources, technologies, and expertise.
Breaking news doesn't always come with sirens. Sometimes it comes quietly. And this one hit in the heartland. For months, many Americans believed the U.S. had the upper hand in the fertilizer fight. Tariffs were supposed to be the weapon. The message was simple: pressure Canada, force better terms, push America toward producing more at home. It sounded strong. It sounded decisive. But out on the farms, it didn't feel that simple. When tariffs were threatened on Canadian fertilizer, especially potash, farmers didn't cheer. They worried. Because fertilizer isn't optional. It's not some luxury input you can swap out. It's the difference between a healthy crop and a weak one, between profit and loss, between stability and sleepless nights. President Donald Trump believed tariffs would push the U.S. towards self-sufficiency. The idea was clear: apply pressure, build domestic production, reduce reliance on a neighbor. But agriculture doesn't move at the speed of political speeches. It moves at the speed of geology, infrastructure, and growing seasons. And geology doesn't negotiate. The United States imports about 90% of its potash. Around 80% of that comes from Canada. Most of it comes from one place: Saskatchewan. Beneath its soil sit massive reserves, estimated at around 1.1 billion tons. That's not something you replace in a few years. That's not something you recreate with a policy announcement. While Washington debated numbers and strategies, mines in Saskatchewan kept running, conveyor belts kept moving, ships kept loading. And here's where things shifted. Instead of reacting with panic, Canada looked outward. Former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney has long been known for thinking long-term. The approach wasn't emotional, it wasn't loud, it was simple. If one market becomes unstable, strengthen others. So Canadian producers deepened ties elsewhere. Brazil, one of the world's largest agricultural exporters, needs fertilizer badly. It imports about 85% of its fertilizer and nearly all of its potash. India, feeding over 1.4 billion people, relies entirely on potash imports. China secures long-term contracts to protect its food supply. Those countries weren't hesitating. They were ready to sign deals, ready to pay, ready to secure supply. Meanwhile, American farmers were stuck in uncertainty. Fertilizer can make up close to half of annual operating costs depending on the crop. Corn, soybeans, wheat, every single one needs potassium. If farmers use less fertilizer to save money, yields drop. But if prices rise, they can't simply charge more for their crops. Commodity prices are set globally. Farmers are price takers, not price makers. So when tariffs even temporarily pushed potash prices up, profit margins shrank fast. Yes, there were bailout packages announced, billions of dollars meant to soften the blow. But farmers know the difference between a band-aid and a cure. Subsidies help for a season. They don't solve structural dependence. And that dependence is real. Russia supplies only a small share of U.S. potash imports. Belarus faces sanctions. Domestic U.S. reserves are limited. There is no quick alternative waiting in the wings. You can't build new mines overnight. You can't manufacture underground reserves. Lawmakers in farm states began to feel the pressure. Republicans from places like Iowa and Nebraska understood that this wasn't abstract trade policy. This was their voters' livelihoods. Quietly at first, and then more openly, some pushed back. They questioned whether threatening Canadian imports was worth the risk. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. When you threaten your biggest supplier, you'd better be sure you can live without them. Canada realized something important during this fight. The American market, while significant, is only part of global demand. By expanding deeper into Asia and Latin America, Canadian producers reduced their vulnerability. Ports on the West Coast allowed faster shipments across the Pacific. Long-term contracts created stability. Investments in infrastructure strengthened their position. What began as pressure from Washington slowly turned into diversification for Canada. And once supply chains shift, they don't always shift back. The $11.5 billion Canadian fertilizer export market is not just a trade number. It represents influence. It represents stability for countries trying to feed billions of people. In a world where food security is becoming more fragile, reliable suppliers matter more than ever. For American farmers, the stress has been very real. Families worry about rising input costs. They worry about unpredictable policy. They worry about planning next season when rules might change again. Farming already carries enough risk. Weather, fuel prices, global demand, adding trade instability makes it harder. This story isn't about villains and heroes. It's about strategy and consequences. Tariffs were meant to create leverage. Instead, they revealed how limited that leverage really was. The U.S. cannot easily replace Canadian potash. That's not politics, that's geology. And Canada understood that from the beginning. While speeches were made and headlines flashed, Canadian producers focused on contracts, customers, and long-term positioning. They didn't need confrontation. They didn't need dramatic responses. They just needed time. And global demand did the rest. In global trade, resources equal power. The country that controls reliable supply holds the stronger hand. Canada holds some of the largest potash reserves on the planet. That fact doesn't change with elections. It doesn't change with tariffs. For American farmers, the lesson has been sobering. Independence sounds powerful, but true independence requires resources, infrastructure, and years of investment. You can't shortcut that reality. For Canada, the episode strengthened its global standing. Markets expanded, relationships deepened, leverage increased. And for Washington, the moment was a reminder that threats only work when alternatives exist. In the end, this wasn't just about fertilizer. It was about food, stability, and long-term thinking. One side reacted quickly, the other side moved patiently. And in agriculture, as in strategy, patience often wins.